What's up, guys? It's Techno Viking 23 coming to you today with a little bit of Destiny commentary. And it's kind of funny. I put out my video called the Destiny Dilemma the other day, where I was talking about how I really didn't want to do much more coverage of this game. And of course, as usual, we got some more information that came out about Destiny's development cycle, I suppose you would consider it, which sheds a lot more light on exactly what's going on over at Bungie and Activision. We got the Marty O'Donnell lawsuit, court documents, and other things that came out a little bit ago to basically show us that things are not running very smoothly over at Bungie, and Activision has kind of exerted their control over Bungie as a company now. It seems like part of the Activision's douchebaggery is starting to sort of bleed down into Bungie's staff and whatnot. But anyways, one of my subscribers and commenters, Ascetic43, actually pointed me in the direction of this article. I don't really pay much attention to what's going on with Destiny anymore, unless I see something really major, but I'm not out there digging around for news articles and stuff on it. But he did post this article and showed it to me. It's an article on Kotaku. I'm going to link it down below, guys, because it's a very, very good article that talks about some of the stuff that went on with Bungie during Destiny's development, and it's very interesting to read this. It shows that it basically proves the cut content thing that a lot of people have been talking about ever since the game came out. There's been several videos about how they cut content from the game to sell later on as DLC from the original vanilla release, and it's very interesting because it even shows and says that they cut content from the Taken King as early as, or as late as this year. When the Taken King came out, they actually have cut some content from that Taken King to sell you in 2016 or to put out in 2016. If they're going to be doing this so-called free DLC plan, as we've heard speculated about, depending on how their microtransactions do. But anyways, this is a really, really good article. It goes very in-depth. This is done by Jason, I believe it's Schreier over at Kotaku. And he says that he went out and he interviewed a bunch of former Bungie employees, and he's talked to a lot of them, and several of them, of course, obviously are remaining anonymous because they have non-disclosure agreements and other things signed where they're not supposed to talk about what happened. But this article paints a pretty interesting picture, and it kind of sounds like a lot what went on with Halo 2 when Bungie, if you guys didn't know, Bungie had a lot of issues, a lot of studio infighting, a lot of problems when they developed Halo 2. Some people know that, some don't, but it just seems like they're still able to make a pretty good game, though, when they put Halo 2 out. But it doesn't seem that the same thing happened with Destiny, and this covers a little bit. It talks about where Joseph Staten left and things like that. I'm going to go over a few points in the article, but like I said, it's going to be down below if you guys definitely go read it, check it out for yourself. Basically, Bungie had been working on Destiny since Halo Reach. I think most of us knew that. In February of 2013 is when they first started showing it off to journalists at their offices in Seattle. And, it was very ambitious. A lot of the stuff they were claiming was going to happen in Destiny was very ambitious. A lot of us were pulled in by those early hype trailers and by the promises of what this game was going to offer, being a shared world shooter. We didn't know if it was going to be an MMO. Was it an FPS? Was it a combination of the two? And apparently when they did this media meeting in 2013, they showed people gameplay that was actually in the swamps of Chicago and on the rings of Saturn. At one time, supposedly, you were able to go to the moon Europa. Obviously, you weren't going to be playing on Saturn because it's a gas giant. But they basically showed off a lot of the stuff. The European Dead Zone was shown. So a lot of the stuff was in development as early, back in 2013 and prior to that, obviously. And they said there was a very, big difference in the game that came out in September of 2014 from these people that went to get to see it at Bungie. And they said it was just very, very interesting in how so much had changed and how there's so many discrepancies between what Bungie promised and showed everybody and then the final product, which actually came out. So apparently in the summer of 2013, just about a year before Destiny was going to come out, the story was fully rebooted. And this is according to 6 people who this guy interviewed, who all decided, obviously, to remain anonymous due to their NDAs and other things. And basically, Bungie ditched everything that Joe Staten and his team had written and worked on, and they decided to rework the entire structure of the game and the story. They scrapped all the plots and reused some characters, some other things, and rewrote a lot of the dialogue. Apparently, the decision was made against Joseph Staten's wishes, sources say, which, of course, that's probably one of the reasons he left. And I'm as Marty O'Donnell showed us in his lawsuit with some of the stuff coming out, the court documents, more than likely this was an Activision thing that came down. Apparently they worked very hard on this for several years, for 3 years after Halo Reach came out, and they showed it to the higher-ups at Bungie, and apparently it was not well received. And some of the rumors that came out earlier when the game first launched was that the initial story of Destiny was very complicated. It had some religious implications. There were things, it was a lot like one of the Halo stories, which makes sense because Joseph Staten's written some pretty amazing gaming stories. And apparently what Activision had wanted was they wanted something kind of simple and watered down that a larger audience would adapt to, obviously for more sales, and that's pretty much, we didn't even really get that, quite honestly, with the opening story. It was, there's, a 3-year-old could have written a more coherent narrative than what we got with Vanilla Destiny. But apparently the project went through several revisions, and originally the game was going to come out it was supposed to come out in September of 2013, but then of course they changed all the stuff. They tried to push it to March of 2014, but then Bungie again had to push that back. And Activision apparently was not really happy with this. They apparently had to go through quite a bit to get Activision to allow them to push the release date back. They were under a lot of pressure to get this done. And actually the original story revolved quite a bit around Rasputin, according to these Bungie people that were interviewed familiar with the original plan. You were actually going to get to meet Rasputin in game. He was going to be an exo who was actually under Rasputin's control, and you were going to go around with him and do all kinds of stuff. He was kidnapped by the Hive. You had to go rescue him from the Dreadnought, actually. So the Dreadnought was going to be available in Vanilla Destiny, and it was, of course, cut out, and obviously that's what we were sold as the Taken King DLC. The entire last third of the vanilla game actually was going to take place on the Dreadnought with you rescuing Rasputin. And obviously we know that didn't happen, and maybe that's why a lot of the Taken King stuff was so heavy with Rasputin. As you know, if you bought the DLC, there's a lot of missions that involve Rasputin. And going in and getting the stealth drive and other things. So it's very, very interesting to see this. And also, Osiris was supposed to be a huge character in Vanilla Destiny. We've seen a lot of those early trailers. They did show the Vex Temple on Mercury. Of course, this is almost several months before Trials of Osiris came out. And basically, he had a robotic assistant who was supposed to be the Stranger. And he was going to be a mentor-type character in Destiny and serve as a guide for the main player. So obviously, there was a lot of this stuff that got completely scrapped or just removed from the game. A lot of us, Trials of Osiris was in the data mine for quite a while, and a lot of us wondered when it was going to come out. So now it's pretty apparent this was all in the game during Destiny's development prior to the game coming out. So it's very interesting. Of course, we all know what happened with also with Crow becoming Lord Uldren and all that. And it's just very interesting to see all this stuff. So Bungie decided to reuse a lot of things that were in the original story, and obviously in a more watered-down version. The pre-reboot of Destiny had a lot more focus on story than the actual game wound up having, according to these people who were interviewed. There were 30 to 45-second cutscenes of NPC characters setting up mission context prior to you launching a mission. Osiris was in one of those, announcing a dramatic discovery about the Vex and asked you to go to Mars and dig up some ancient relics. The Crow would call you for help in the middle of a firefight with the Fallen on Venus. And every mission had a full cutscene with 3 to 5 minutes at the end. That sounds kind of like almost like a Halo game with all that, the cutscenes and everything. And of course, we obviously know we did not get anything close to that when the game came out. Now, there's some conflicts, of course, about the original supercut they made of the game to show off to the higher ups. Some people said it was terrible, it was confusing and esoteric story, it didn't make any sense. Well, that's what we really got anyways. Others argued otherwise and said there was very cool, very powerful stuff. It had very strong characters and strong narrative. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It unraveled and solved the mystery in the corner of the universe. Considering one guy said it was terrible, it was confusing, highly esoteric, that didn't make sense, I'm guessing he's probably, I don't know, just a hater, because that's pretty much what the game was anyways. And then a third person who's familiar with the game said the story was actually very interesting, but the supercut that they had to make to show the higher-ups just did not do it enough justice. The plot itself was actually very good, but the quality of the supercut they made was not that great. It made sense on paper, but it was also constantly being edited and changed, and it turned into a Frankenstein amalgamation. like the rest of the game. So that again sounds kind of like Activision getting their fingers in the pie, wanting to do everything. And everyone agrees that Bungie senior leadership did not like what they saw. Some in the studio took issue with the progression, which would have shown players all the main planets. But basically, Jason Jones told the team he wanted less of a linear story and one where the player could go around and do whatever they wanted at any time. That's pretty much, I guess, how Destiny turned out. But given the Marty O'Donnell lawsuit, we know just how much of a pulse Activision had on Bungie's higher up, so it wouldn't be surprising if Jason Jones was basically taking orders from above. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. So they actually decided in the reboot, the complete total reboot for the story didn't happen until July of 2013. They tried to keep as much of the lore mythology as possible in the game. But they basically overhauled and redid Joseph Staten's entire plot, and so they threw pretty much everything out, and so it came down to Chris Barrett and Luke Smith, our buddy Luke Smith, to cobble together a less linear plot for the game, and they did this over the span of 2 weeks. Very interesting. So it took them 2 weeks to make Destiny's story. No wonder it turned out so great, right? Then they came up with a new plan for Destiny. This is back in 2013, so keep an idea on the time here. The new plan for Destiny, they rescoped the game, they cut out the Dreadnought and moved it to an expansion pack, which was called Comet. They changed the order in which players would progress between each planet, and they cut apart each story mission, splicing together encounters from a variety of old pieces to form the Chimera that was Destiny's new campaign. So apparently what we were playing through, the original vanilla game, was cut up pieces of story missions. So some of the story missions were probably a lot longer and more in depth before. And the fact that they had the Dreadnought already in the game in 2013 and decided to cut it out and make it Comet pretty much confirms the cut content theory about Destiny. And it's just mind-blowing how bad this is. Oh man. So casualties of the redesign process included characters like Osiris and Charlemagne, which would have been an artificial intelligence warmind on Mars, who was promoted in early Destiny previews but never actually appeared in the game. And wow, just a lot of good information here. And then of course Joseph Staten left during the Midsummer reboot, although Bungie didn't announce his departure until later on when it had been pretty much redone. Two sources both said the parting was not amicable. Joseph Staten declined to comment for the article. Of course, he's probably trying to take the high road, but I think most of us pretty much knew that he was not happy with having to leave, and we knew it had something to do with his work probably being thrown out. A lot of the writers that Staten had hired did stay on and worked on the Grimoire cards, which is probably why the Grimoire cards turned out so well, despite the fact they're not in the game. That's, of course. It's amazing that games with much lower development budgets like, Dragon Age Inquisition actually have all their lore and codex actually in the game. Kind of a mind-blowing statistic that came out this week. They talked about how much The Witcher 3 cost to make, and it was only about $80 million. So they had less than 1/5 of Destiny's budget and were able to create a huge, massive content-packed game with actual characters and narrative and storyline that are pretty good. And it's just shocking. It's just amazing how these AAA companies continue to put out garbage after garbage game. Most of Staten's hires have now left the studio. Clay Carmouche stayed on at Bungie to pen the story and dialogue for The Taken King, which is probably why we got some halfway decent story missions early on with some good cutscenes with Cade 6. And he actually left the studio afterwards. So obviously, Bungie is not having a good time retaining their employees. Mostly that probably has a lot to do with Activision. Wow. It's just amazing to read through this. And of course, you're probably not going to hear any of this from any of the Destiny, the main Destiny community. So over the next few months, they continued to build Destiny after the reboot. The narrative took a complete backseat, as did the writers themselves. The writing team that Joe put together was ostracized, said one person who worked on the game. The story was basically written without writers. Oh Oh man, this Destiny came out on September 9th, 2014. Most of the development team was proud of the game, a source told me, and many were shocked to see the harsh reviews. Although he claims most at Bungie had anticipated that players would not enjoy the story. The internal surveys pegged the Metascore critics at 90 average, and it turned out that the game only received a 76, and Bungie missed out on a major bonus from Activision because of that, because the game did not release to good reviews. And kind of like how a lot of us have said, critics and fans like the look and feel of the game and the gunplay, but the lackluster story and everything else, the grindiness, the bizarre leveling system, all the bugs and glitches and stuff, really turned a lot of people off, and that's kind of the way I felt when the game first came out. So they do claim that right after the game came out, Bungie started to absorb all the feedback and decided to work on a plan. They actually rebooted the Dark Below months before it was going to ship. So the Dark Below was done in just 9 weeks, which is very interesting. But they had all that done already and decided to redo it, I guess. December of 2014, they brought in Diablo 3 director Josh Mosquera and a few other Blizzard members to talk to Bungie to try to help them out with the game because they were having such a frustrating time with it. And they thought they'd be able to redeem themselves using some of Diablo 3 strategies, and obviously that didn't really work because Dark Below is god-awful. I think most people will agree on that. And yeah, just a lot of different stuff. A lot of different stuff here. And then Bungie had to ship the Taken King, which went through its own set of development issues. Production of this expansion, the Taken King, was actually done in 2013. They were going to release it for $60, and there was going to be a brand new area, Europa, which, like I said, was one of the moons. And they were going to have a new area on Earth called the European Dead Zone, another patrol area on Earth, which was itself pushed back from vanilla Destiny, according to sources. They were also going to add a totally new feature, multiple fireteam activities, where multiple fire teams could go into one area together. And there was supposed to be a large player community area that was put on Mars with new strikes and a new raid on Mars. The entire last chunk of the Mars content was cut and passed to Activision subsidiary High Moon Studios to develop for Destiny's full-size 2016 sequel. So they've actually taken content out of the Taken King and they've moved it to 2016 to use in Destiny 2. Wow. That's just some shady stuff right there. That's some shady stuff. So, and then of course, Taken King was already done. It was done back in 2013 with the Dreadnought. So this is pretty much confirming a lot of the people who were called tinfoil hats when they talked about how there was so much content cut from the original game. And now it appears that is all true, which a lot of us suspected, or have suspected for a long time. And then it's talking about here how they decided to do the microtransactions. And then they're supposedly going to put out a drip feed of free content to keep people playing in the months before Destiny 2 comes out in the fall of 2016. So that pretty much says to me we're not going to see any more major expansion packs coming up between now and Destiny 2, which is weird because they supposedly were going to have a Cabal and a Vex DLC, which is probably content that's already been chopped out and going to be resold, but who knows. And so yeah, instead of doing DLC 1 and 2 after Comet, they're actually just going to try to do incremental releases. So they're going to do a Destiny and a Comet every year, supposedly now. They're just going to switch the game to an annual model. So very, very interesting article to read, guys. Like I said, I will link this down below. I suggest you guys go read this. It's going to open a lot of eyes, or it should anyways. I'm sure the Desticles will still continue to blindly support Bungie and Activision. But this article is a good indication of what's happened over at Bungie and the kind of the studio they are today. As I've said, it's been really interesting to watch the transition of how they've gone to just being a really bad developer, and just some of their employees there, I don't know, they just come off as really arrogant and kind of like a bunch of pricks. But like I said, this article basically confirms what a lot of us suspected. There was a ton of chopped up, cut content. Destiny was apparently going to be a much fuller, more interesting game along the lines of a Halo game, but they just had a lot of problems with it and a lot of problems developing the game. So anyways, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Make sure you go read the article, then come back, watch the video, make a comment. Let me know what you guys feel about this. We can have a little bit of a discussion about it. Like I said, I'm not going to be doing too much more with Destiny, but I felt this was definitely worth bringing up and talking about, because it does show that and kind of confirms the cut content theory that we all had. So, like I said, go read it, guys. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next time.
Zone B lost. Zone A neutralized. Enemy captured Zone B. Zone A secure. You clearly lost. Heavy ammo inbound. Heavy ammo available. You've got to hold those zones. Maybe next time, Guardian.